di Sócia.
Hi everyone, my name is Carla. I'm the programmer for the showcase Magical Women, Reinventions of the Witch in Film. We are very excited here today to be with Ana Biller, who's the director of The Love Witch, which is a feature currently being screened in the showcase in Rio de Janeiro, but it was already shown in Brasilia and São Paulo. And we also have here for this conversation today, Analu Bambirra, who is a film curator and also a producer. So we thank you very much, both of you, for being here with us today. And just one brief comment before I'll let you start. It was very interesting to screen the film in these two cities I just mentioned, and in each screening, it was always the film that attracted the most audience. It was always the most crowded room. So it's very, and I mean, this feature already has a couple of years on its background. So it's very interesting to see how it dialogues, how it reaches for audiences in different places, in different times, and in different countries. And not only women, but a very broad range of spectators. So thank you again very much, Anna, for being here with us today and for this generosity to talk about your film and a lot of other points and questions that might be raised today. So thank you, Analu and Anna. Please feel free to start.
Thank you, Carla. Thank you so much for this invite. It's a pleasure to be here. It's a fantastic festival, it's a fantastic showcase. And thank you, Anna, for being here as well. I'm very honored to speak to you. And I've become a big fan of your film after I watched it.
Thank you. Very happy to be here. Thank you.
I thought about starting to talking about your background in feminist studies. I've read that you are a big fan of a lot of movies. Famous article about the female gaze. And how was it for you to start reading about feminism, and how was it at university?
Well, I studied art and film in school, and as part of the art department classes at CalArts, we were reading a lot of feminist studies, women's studies in some of my classes. And so when I read Laura Mulvey's essay in particular, I actually looked at it as a kind of a challenge and I realized what was missing from the movies I didn't like and what was present in the movies that I loved. And I suddenly realized that my whole life that I really loved classic Hollywood women's pictures because they actually did include, they weren't from the male gaze. And later I did some research on old Hollywood and I realized a lot of the scripts were written by women. A lot of the screenplays were taken from books written by women. A lot of the, just a lot of writers were women, and a lot of their goal was to appeal to women and to get women to come to the movies with their families, because the women were the people that made the choices for the family. So in my lifetime, movies have only been for men, most movies, I guess until quite recently, and they were very alienating to me. So it made me understand. I think that the essay was very much extremely relevant in the 1970s when it was written, at a time when male cinema had completely eclipsed all of cinema, and when they were really only producing movies for men and boys. And the whole, female studio star system had collapsed. So I remain obsessed with old classic women's pictures. And I decided that if I were going to become a filmmaker, that's what I wanted to do, is create films that were from a female gaze and not from a male gaze. And that's just kind of been my goal ever since. It just gave me a focus, like somewhere to start from. Because I can't, you read all these male writers and you watch all these male films and you think you can't be a filmmaker because your work isn't like that. And then you think, well, I have something inside, I have my own point of view as a woman. And there are just not enough movies made from that place. So this is where I want to come from.
That's fantastic. I find it important in my own work as well to embrace, for me as well, if I want to work with film, I want to take it to another direction, to avoid the same path that all films are going with this male gaze and this and this made me admire a lot in your film, because you make this film about this powerful character, this powerful, glamorous woman who has a lot of power in her hands and with a lot of complexities, and that's perfectly fine. She's powerful even with her complexities. I feel that only man has this possibility of being complex and dubious in this kind of films. For women, they have to have a lot of layers and be more realistic. And this for me is fantastic for your film. Can you talk a little bit about how you reached the idea of the Love Witch, and how you how was it for you to build this character, to construct this character?
Well, I wanted to do a movie about a witch who's a femme fatale. And a femme fatale is somebody who's one thing on the inside and she's another thing on the outside, meaning what she wants is power, and maybe she wants other things like love and attention, but from the male point of view, she's just pure evil. So do a femme fatale from the female point of view. Also allow in the male point of view that she's evil, but not have it be from a man's point of view, where it's the man is the main character, and it's the man's point of view of how she's evil and she just destroys lives, but to have it from her point of view of why she turned out the way she did, why she wants all this power, how she's been hurt. And, I think she's a bit mentally ill, but, she reminds me of a lot of women that I know. But I also wanted to do something about, the witch. The witch is such a controversial figure in history. The witch is the same thing as a lot of women fantasize about being a witch because of the power and the uniqueness of the witch. But to men, the witch is evil and you have to burn her, you have to kill her, she has to be destroyed. So for me, a witch is a metaphor for a powerful, dangerous woman, like a scary woman, But I also didn't want to make her like just good, I want to make her, I'm sorry, my cat, hold on a second. He's making so much noise over there. And again, this is inspired by classic pre-code pictures, classic noir films of the femme fatale, but also making it about women today, like me, my sister, women that I know. So.
Yeah. And it's very interesting how you make this very evident, the inside and the outside of how Elaine is seen in the film. The audience can see both sides, and also like you use this what's the word? those both sides to create a thrilling narrative. It's the horror. It's not a horror film, but it's like there is this elements of horror. And
yeah, like a kind of like a thriller.
Yeah,
a little bit like it is a little bit of a horror, just in the sense of inside of her mind is a little bit like horror, you know.
Yeah,
because it's just so full of cobwebs. She's kind of insane. And I really think that, I feel like the patriarchy drove her insane. And that is the feminist thing about it. She's been driven insane by only being valued for her looks and her body her whole life, and never being loved or respected for anything else she can give. And this has turned her into kind of a shell of a person who almost has no soul. And she's trying to find a soul and to try to find love and maybe have one last chance to have some love and to have some human connection. But she doesn't get to have it because the men that she interacts with, they still refuse to see her as a person, even when they think they love her. So this is the tragedy of it. And that's the horror of it too.
That's
because
true.
She might be evil, but the men are, in a way, the men are worse because they see her as subhuman, actually.
Yes, for sure.
But it's also very normal in terms of women dating men who will relate to it. Do you know what I'm saying? So that's what becomes sad, because she's kind of almost a supernatural character. And yet it's like her reality is just very ordinary, actually, in terms of what we go through when we try to find love or respect.
She highlights all these experiences with men and being objectified by men. I feel like her character highlights it so much. It takes it to another level, you know.
By exaggerating it so much, in some ways it brings out the ordinariness of the situation. Yeah. So.
Sorry, I'm a little bit nervous. And with the exaggeration that you bring of these situations regarding women dating men and being objectified and everything, you bring these topics with a very unique visual experience, a lot of visual pleasure. I read you mentioning in interviews that you really want to bring visual pleasure out of the male gaze and making everything very, very pleasurable to watch.
Well, I'm actually trying to literalize the challenge to horror movies essay, which is about visual pleasure. So meaning like visual pleasure, not just the way men would have visual pleasure in the sight of a naked woman, but the way a woman can have visual pleasure in the sight of a woman fashionably dressed, in the sight of interior decoration, at the sight of cake or pretty things or pretty colors. So I don't think it's the male gaze, actually. I think it's the female gaze in the mirror. It's the woman looking at herself in the mirror in a pink dress and a big hat. It's the woman looking at her pretty teapot and her pretty couch. And I really think that when you're watching the movie, it's very difficult to sexualize Elaine, except in the scenes where she's being sexual on purpose. And the way that I do this is to just have her completely covered up all the time. Her neck is high and her sleeves are long. She's covered. She's got a wig. Sometimes she has a hat. This is on purpose. The idea that her body is covered. So the idea is that this is for women to look at her as a person with her fashion sense. And like, I want to wear that. And the women would be thinking, I want to wear that outfit. It's not really encouraging men to say, oh, I want to have sex with her. And they're going to think it anyway. But it's only in the scenes where she intends to seduce a man exactly in that way, that will happen, that the audience will see her that way. So I'm trying to control the gaze. What's interesting is somebody tried to do a video cover for the Love Witch recently. And it was so interesting because it was a man, an artist, trying to do a painting. And so the first painting he did was, I can't even remember, it was just, I think it was her nude with her hair over her breasts. It's something that is in the movie very briefly. And I don't have any publicity stills or anything on that shot. We didn't do any nudity in the publicity for the film on purpose. And I said, I don't like that. This is a film for women. I don't want it to be this nude shot. And then he had this other one with her in the background with a long dress, but then it's all about a man in the foreground with his face like crying and naked and crying. And it's just, well, this isn't a movie about a man and a man's feelings where she's in the background. And then he had another one with her in like a slip, like an ugly, modern looking slip, but also very bare. So he couldn't put her as the subject of the cover dressed the way she's dressed. In the movie, he couldn't do it because it's like the way he sees her is first is nude, then a second is way in the background. And the third, if she's clothed, then she's still objectified and wearing something as bare as possible, but without any style. It's amazing. It was amazing. Like he couldn't get it right. And I think it's just because this is how men look at women. They look at them. They're not the main subjects. They're always sexualized. They don't see what the woman is wearing. They just want to see the skin underneath or the shape of the body. And to me, it's like a very limited gaze. So when you talk about the male gaze, I don't think I'm doing the male gaze because the male gaze is not interested in clothes and hats and teapots. You know what I'm saying? It just wants to see the naked woman. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, in your film, I see that in other films directed by men, the camera also has this relationship of fetishizing, like how they shoot a woman, you know, always very focusing on the bodies, on the body, on the shape, and how, and yeah, and in your film there is absolutely not that, and it's
but also
fantastic.
What about horror films though, that also they have a lot of women covered with blood, covered naked and covered with blood and covered and looking ugly? They're not looking for glamour, you know, they're not looking to have the makeup artists make the woman look pretty, beautiful. They're trying to make her look like a possession because she's been like mauled, molested, hurt, injured. This is like hot for them. This is sexy to see a woman who's completely helpless. So like the helplessness becomes the male gaze, the helplessness of the woman crawling through the mud, crawling through the dirt, being chased, falling down, getting her face bloody, helpless, completely helpless. This is sexual for men, you know, because she's sexualized. She's not wearing lipstick. She doesn't look pretty. So you see, like the idea of the male gaze being a pretty, glamorous woman, that's from the 1950s. Today, women who are objectified in films are screaming, running, crying, crawling, vomiting. It comes from pornography, from the idea of like possessing a woman so that she has nothing left. She has no spirit. She's so destroyed in her soul that she has nothing, no humanity left. This is like the goal. See, it's because it's about ownership. It's not about a woman being pretty or beautiful. That's such an old-fashioned idea about the male gaze, you know?
Yeah, it's
like if the male gaze was about women being beautiful, then we would see beautiful women all over movies, but we don't anymore. We don't. This is something from the past. I mean, they're pretty. I mean, in movies directed by women or period films, you might see this, but it's not. Movies made by men, for the most part now, have women looking like that. Yeah. Anorexic and helpless.
A male gaze wants a helpless woman because there brings out she will always be followed by this strong man who's going to take care of her, and if it's not like just killing her, there is also.
But yeah, that too. But that's even. It's almost like they want to see women suffering. I think it's just it's more sadistic than that. I think that's even old-fashioned. The idea of the man saving the woman. You know, like a lot of movies now, they have women. You know, they feel like you can slaughter 10 women, as long as one woman lives at the end, then it's a movie about strong women. You know, it's like as long as you have a final girl, then it's a feminist movie. But really, the movie is about slaughtering 10 women, and then watching the 11th woman really suffer. It's about the spectacle of female suffering. So this is like the thing in The Love Witch. So I set out to make a horror movie, but I decided she's never going to be running or screaming or bloody or compromised or weak. I just decided not to. She's not going to do it. I just try to make a horror movie where she never is looking abject. Never.
Yeah, no. She doesn't have a moment of being that.
But she doesn't. No, she doesn't. Yeah. Nobody. Yeah. Like the worst thing that happens is Griff kind of yells at her at the bar. He calls her a narcissist. So that's the only abuse we see, really. Or we hear in her head, we have voices in her head she remembers from the past, that her husband and her father were talking to her in a way that wasn't nice. But this is not. It's not the fetish of watching female suffering. You know.
Yeah. Yes.
So it's like if I'm doing the male gaze, I'm doing the male gaze from the 1950s and before. I'm not doing, you know, and that actually was, in a way, it was like a gay and female gaze, because that's who was creating all those images mainly. It's like, you know what I mean? It's like it was a glamour image, which was made largely for women to enjoy, you know.
And it's very empowering for not only for watching it as audience, but also as a film professional, because you were able to bring that up and just put it on a screen, and it's empowering to watch. Like you see it's easy to justify fetishizing women suffering, or fetishizing other elements that they shouldn't be justified, and you just bring this other possibility. And I wonder that there might be people saying, like, she shouldn't need to be this glamorous. She shouldn't need to be this obsessed. But this shouldn't be this way or this way. A lot of criticizing, but you're there. You put everything. Everything.
Yeah, I mean, but everyone is always telling women what they shouldn't do. You know.
Yes.
Because you shouldn't be too. You shouldn't be too plain. You shouldn't be too pretty. Yeah. You shouldn't wear too much makeup. You have to wear some makeup. You know, you can't be too fat. You can't be too thin. I mean, who cares in a way? You know, it's like, I like it. I like looking at glamour, so I put glamour in because I like it, not to please anybody else. I love looking at glamour. You know, and like fashion magazines, who buys those? Like not men. Women love to look at other beautiful women dressed in fashion, looking beautiful. Women love it. It's for women. It's for women and gay men to love that. Men are not buying fashion magazines usually. You know? That's why they're buying porn. They're not buying fashion. They're doing fashion.
Yeah. And I really want to ask you about how it was to shoot the film. If it was challenging. I know you spent several years crafting everything the art, but I mean, like, when you propose a film that goes on a different direction than what we see in mainstream media of how to portray women and how to portray witchcraft, I wonder how which challenges you could have faced in this path of embracing. I really want to make it this way, and you know.
Well, I had complete creative control, but that's partly because I didn't do it the regular way. I didn't go through a studio system. I didn't go through like a traditional producer route. I produced it myself, and I got investors, and so they, you know, and I had creative control, so I could do whatever I wanted. The problem was, you see, I could not have taken the script to producers and got it done the regular way, because they would have just said no, because my script was too weird. I knew that. I knew I couldn't do it that way. In fact, I'm writing much more conventional scripts now, and I still can't get them made. I mean, still am having a problem, even though I'm trying to really fit in now a little bit more, because my ideas are still too radical. I think they're still too feminist. I'm trying to tone it down, but it's hard. It's hard to make a feminist movie in Hollywood, even though people love to talk about feminism and how much they support feminism. People are actually afraid to make a feminist movie. It's weird, but anyway, it's very hard. But on the set, I had a lot of problems because a lot of people didn't understand what we were doing, and they thought it was very, very weird, and they didn't relate to it. And a lot of the crew was very hostile to what we were shooting. And I think a lot of the times male crew, they don't like having a female director, and they didn't like that I didn't have a boss. They really didn't like that. They didn't like seeing me in a situation where I didn't have a boss telling me what to do or reining me in. Sometimes it fills people with a lot of terror when they come onto a set and that there's a woman in control. I'm directing and I'm producing, and there's nobody above me. That really frightens them in a way. They want to police me. There was a lot of that going on, like people trying to police me or trying to shut me down. There was a lot of, I mean, I had some very supportive people on the set, but there was a lot of, it was very uncomfortable. And I don't feel, in general, I didn't have a lot of support until, you know, a few weeks in, they started to trust me because they realized the days aren't running over. I'm getting all my shots. Everything's calm. They're being fed nicely. You know, it's like I was running a very tight ship, and it took them a while to realize that it wasn't all falling apart. And I just feel like a lot of that was just they take a look at me and they just think that person's going to mess up. That person isn't going to do a good job. And it's like, why do they think that? Why? Is it because I'm a woman? I think so. You know, I mean, why else? I mean, what did we, like, it wasn't my first feature film, you know, I had everything very well organized. Just like on my first feature film, I had the same attitudes. It was really hard. You know, I thought, well, I'm much more experienced now. It was just as difficult the second time. So, it's really tough. I mean, I'm hoping that after like Me Too and after there's more female directors now and the fact that more people know about my movie, that the next time it would be easier. But it's very unpleasant for me. Like I have a lot of trauma about being on the set, even though I know what I'm doing and I enjoy what I'm doing and I have great rapport with the actors and everything's running smoothly. I just feel like there's so much distrust and hostility towards female directors that it makes it very tough going in just to work in that environment that's so hostile.
I'm sorry you went through all that. It must be very hard. It is hard for women to work in the film industry because of that, especially in such strong film.
Yeah, I feel like everybody wants you to take care of them emotionally. I think that's part of what's happening. They want you to come, make them feel comfortable, like be a mother. The problem is I'm too busy to do that. If I do that, then I don't have time to direct my film. I'm there for the actors. I'm there to coddle and nurture and flatter and make the actors feel comfortable so I get my scenes. I can't go around the whole crew and do that, you know?
It's impossible.
You know, and everybody expects for a woman to do that, you know, and it's like, that's why I have an assistant director, you know, but if the assistant director isn't doing it, then you have a problem. The assistant director is the one who's supposed to make the crew feel all happy. If they're not doing it, you know what I mean, then you really get a problem. But then it gets blamed on you, you know, so we have some dynamics that weren't great, you know, so.
I hope in your next films, this dynamic doesn't happen again.
Yeah, I know, I'll have to be a lot more careful about choosing my production team. I guess I just vet people a lot more and get to know them a little bit more. That was my mistake, is that I had to hire everyone kind of last minute, although that's usually how films work, you know, like you find out when you're shooting and then you only have a few weeks and you have to hire everybody all at once, you know, so that's what happened. But so that, I guess that's always going to be the case on a film where you're not like, especially a low budget film where you can't pay like top, you know, the top rates to get the best people, you know. Yeah, you're always going to get some people who are unhappy and grumpy and sabotaging, and you know, there's always going to be a few people like that on the set.
Yeah.
So
change a little bit the subject. Because I really want you to talk a little bit about the art, because you nailed it. So it's amazing. I have a specific question about the use of the tarot cards, not only for the visual references in photography, in art and how evident it is, but also about how you use it in a narrative. You always use the Three of Swords to indicate there is a murder. And I loved it. Can you talk a little bit of about the relation with the tarot in the film, and also with yourself?
well, I was using tarot cards. I use tarot cards when I'm troubled. So years ago, before I shot the film, I had a little bit of heartbreak. It was actually quite extreme. And every time I would draw like a single card, no matter how many times I shuffled, it would always come up with Three of Swords. And it's because that was my situation and I couldn't get out of it. And I didn't stop drawing it until I resolved the issue. And this went on for more than a year. And then during that period, I only drew swords. It was like the Nine of Swords, and mainly the Three of Swords, but all the swords and they're all just about stabbing you in the back and feeling stabbed, and you know, and all this like betrayal, and I thought, this is very interesting because I can't get away from this card. And so part of the inspiration for The Love Witch was, I want to make a film that shows heartbreak on the screen, what heartbreak feels like, for your heart to be broken. So putting some of that tarot card imagery, even in the costumes in the Renaissance Fair, that was inspired by tarot card imagery. And then some of the paintings were directly from tarot cards. And then the color scheme in Elaine's apartment comes from the Alexander Crowley, the Thoth tarot deck. So I was just having fun with that. I just like to come up with a theme and then really, really get into the symbolism of it, whatever that is. You know, so when I'm trying to really express that Elaine is obsessed with her feminine fantasies, to do the pink tea room, and just, you know, just use color as much as possible, and use color and decor and costume and lighting to create atmosphere and symbolism. And sometimes people find that silly, but I think that those are your tools as a filmmaker to, you know, to create. You can create a lot more meaning with everything else than just the text, you know.
Yes, definitely. It's not it's what makes a film even richer when you go digging into these layers, and you realize it's so well thought, each reference, each piece.
Yeah, and you have white horses in the tarot. There's always like a white horse. The knights are all on white horses, and then you see the white horse. This is a symbol in her paintings and in the Renaissance Fair. And then in the Renaissance Fair, it's almost like it comes so much out of the tarot and so much out of her fantasy life that she's already expressed, that I wanted it almost to seem like it could even be her fantasy, that it never even happened. Do you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, that he's like, you know, he's the Griff is from the tarot as well, right? He was the knight. The knight, I can't remember which knight now, the Knight of Cups, I think, that came, that she drew the Knight of Cups, and then she met him and she felt that he was the Knight of Cups, also riding on a white horse. So the idea, and then they're riding on the white horse in the end. So it's almost like, it's like how much of it is, the film is her fantasy life, you know, and how much of it is real, you know. I think at least that part, maybe we're not really sure if that really happened even, that whole Renaissance thing.
I like to think that it even if you're not sure, it could have existed, because in the reality, in the film, it is possible that they were running around and suddenly there was this Renaissance fair.
Yeah, and I'd like to make a movie where the way it looks from the very beginning creates that possibility. Because if I didn't make it look so fanciful, like with the tea room and her apartment and some of these things, you wouldn't accept that when it happens. The idea is that you create a film where the visual world of the film can be anything. And so you'll accept anything as being, as really existing, you know?
It's amazing. And well, I just want to mention that how the art is so well stitched in the film, to the point that even her makeup highlights her horror. You know, I realized how light here it is in Elaine, and how she uses her manipulation skills to reach men. And it was like every little thing is thought, and well, and congratulations for that.
Thank you. Yeah, I enjoyed creating all of that. Yeah, I think like going forward, I don't know if I'll be able to do that anymore, because I had so much prep time, because I was just working without, like, if you have a normal like producer, they don't let you spend years in pre-production, you know.
Yeah,
you know, you can only have a limited time, and then a very limited set design budget, and then you have to pay your whole team, and then it adds up. So you can't, so unless you get a really big budget, then you can spend on all that. It's like it'd be very hard to do that again, you know.
I don't think any producers would allow a director to stitch each costume themselves, even with a big budget. They wouldn't.
I know, I would never want to do it again anyway. I hate sewing now. Like, I did too much sewing and now I hate it. I never want to sew anymore. I spent like 2 years sewing for that thing, literally. I mean, a year and a half, 2 years. It was insane. I felt so depressed, because I was like, I'm not even a filmmaker, I'm just a seamstress. And so much of that is just like washing and ironing, this yards and yards and yards of fabric, and just having to do all the hems. It's so labor intensive. It's like sweatshop work. And it's just like terrible.
I can imagine.
I don't want to ever do that again, you know?
It's like every little thing, it's too much. I can talk a little bit about how you portray a modern witchcraft, and if you got feedbacks from pagans who watched your film and reached you.
Yeah, it's very accurate. I did a lot of research. I read dozens of books because I wanted to get it right. And then finally, I figured it out. It took me a long time. It's just not at all like other religions, because it's very new. So it's from the, really in America and in UK, it really started in the 1950s. And it's based on paganism, but it's all new. All the witchcraft we have is new. There's no real history to it. Everybody does it their own way. And then the other thing I found out is that a lot of different types of witches work together. There's all kinds of different pagans in a coven sometimes. And so that's what I decided to do. So I thought I'm going to do that. So I have the man, the wizard. He's like a Satanist and a Crowleyite and a Thelemite, and left hand magic, and then the wife is Wiccan. So he's like the dark path and she's the light path, and they're married and they have a coven, which is why, you know, and I base the rituals on real rituals from real covens, you know. So like gardener, Gardnerian, one rite is Gardnerian, the other is Alexandrian. So the rite where it's like the great rite where she's kind of like raped by the warlock. That's, you know, that's a traditional rite of initiation in some covens, which they mostly don't do anymore. They mostly do it symbolically now. Like with the knife in the chalice, it's like it's symbolic sex. Most covens don't do that anymore because it's considered sexual assault. At this point, I mean, in the 1960s and 70s and stuff, that was pretty common, maybe even through the 80s. And even, you know, I've been to some rituals, they usually don't use even wine anymore because there are kids there. They use punch or grape juice. But back in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, they were having sexual initiations called the Great Rite. And if you wanted to belong to a coven, a lot of times you did have to have sex with the high priest or priestess. And sometimes it really was coercive. And there's a lot of dirt on that. You know, I researched all the stuff, and I thought, okay, so that's just like another part of Elaine's trauma, you know, to make it the kind of coven where in order to belong, then she had to kill herself in one more way. So that she's been kind of brainwashed into a cult.
Yes.
You know, so that is kind of, but then Barbara, the high priestess, she's like the kind of woman who has a husband that does terrible things and she looks the other way, like she refuses to see what he's doing, or she doesn't want to see, you know. And she's kind of a little bit like an automaton because she's kind of like brainwashed into a cult. And then when the twins, the blonde twins, are dancing, they're being brainwashed into a cult. That's what that scene is about. It's about their brainwashing, just so you can see how Elaine was brainwashed. You can see her training there. And you can see how they're all very happy to be indoctrinated into what a woman needs to do. And it's like, I feel like that's the brainwashing that all teenage girls are subjected to in the world without even, you don't have to join a cult. I mean, all girls by the time they're 13, they know that they can use their body and get things if they want, you know, and they all know that they can do it, and that they'll get some power, and that they'll get rewards, or maybe they know that if they don't do it, they're scared not to do it. And it's just like, when they're too young to understand what it means, it's heartbreaking to me. Like, to me, that's almost like the most heartbreaking scene in the movie, because it's about how we're all conditioned as girls to not think of ourselves as people, starting from adolescence, you know?
Yeah. Like, your power lies on allowing yourself to be an object, and you should embrace being an object. And it's very, yes, it's something that we don't need to be in a cult to learn. Like, we see media, we see people, friends and people around always talking about it.
Yeah, and you know what's so interesting is so many men who watch The Love Witch don't get anything out of it except for Elaine's nudity or sexuality. They get nothing, and they just get nothing out of the story. They get nothing. They say this is a movie that has no plot. It has no theme. It's not about anything. There's no themes in it. There's no subject matter, because it's invisible to them. These things are invisible to them. So they're bored. They're bored during that burlesque scene because they don't want to watch something about female conditioning. All they can, and it's like, well, why are they bored? Because there's a really sexy burlesque dancer, but they don't like watching that. They don't like watching that because it puts them in the point of view of the men that are leering at her. And that gives them no point of view because they can't be sympathetic to the girls being indoctrinated into a cult. So they have no point of view. So they get bored and they fall asleep. And then they start disliking the movie right about there because their point of view is not present. And so the thing is that men are so used to having their point of view be the only point of view in a movie, and to always have a male point of view catered to. I was kind of excited when I saw that happening, all those complaints starting during that scene. It's when men started to really complain, because I realized I'm actually achieving what I set out to do, which is making a movie that women understand, that like a 16-year-old girl understands better than a 50-year-old man. You know, I thought that's something of an achievement if I can do that.
Yeah. And talk about reception. I've read that there was a big focus on your film when it was released, because it was right after Trump was elected in the US. But I want to ask you if afterwards, it's been 6 years already, if I'm not mistaken, after your film was released, if anything has changed when people approach you and talk to you about your film, when you see a screening and you see how people react to it.
Yeah, I think that it doesn't, people aren't, it's not so controversial anymore. So people don't so much feel the need to put me down. Like men don't feel so much the need to be upset by it or put me down. And it doesn't feel controversial. I think people admire it and like it, or they don't like it, but it doesn't feel so much like I'm the target of hate or controversy anymore. And I think that's because I haven't made another movie yet. I think it's like people, like maybe men were afraid, like women are going to take over. They're going to start making these movies about women's rights, and we're going to be left out. We're going to be cut out of the picture. Nobody's going to make movies for us anymore. And they got all riled up and scared. And then they're like, oh, that didn't happen. So it's like, okay, this woman doesn't have any power. She's not famous, or she didn't make a lot of money. She's fine. She's still down there. So I feel like people are, you know, men aren't intimidated by me anymore, because the film didn't change the world at all. And I didn't become, you know, powerful, and everything is still exactly the same as the way it was before the movie came out. It didn't change the world at all. So but I get more and more fans, actually, like on TikTok, and you know, I just get all these new fans that are young girls who feel very, very strong and very powerful, and it becomes empowerment for them, and that's what I love. So
that sounds very cool to see new fans and people approaching you every time. And
yeah, I have so many fans now. I mean, I really have a lot of fans. It's really great. I just wish I could make another movie for my fans, you know. It's hard because I'm trying to do it now through the studio system, and that's why it's so hard, because I think my scripts, again, are still too weird. I keep writing, though. I keep trying, because we'll see. I've been trying to make this Bluebeard movie for years now, and so during the pandemic, I wrote a novel. I wrote a novel version of it. It's a book. I just finished that, and I'm sending it out, and I'm hoping that if the book comes out and if people like the book, then I can make the movie. In the meantime, I'm writing more scripts, so I'm trying to find a way to get movies produced that producers will believe in my script, so I can. It's been hard, because my work is unique, and everything is always based on a model of something else that made a lot of money, that sold really well, and I can never point to anything because my work is unique, you know. A little bit of a problem.
Yeah, I really hope that you can find a way to make your film happen. Looking forward to your book now that I'm
yeah. Thank you. The book is, I love writing books. I mean, I wrote this, and now I want to write more books. So I would really, it would be so amazing if this book could be popular, and then I can make a movie, and then I can get my career back up. So.
Is there anything that you would like to add to what we talked? Something you would like to mention? You would like to bring to speak up?
No, I mean, I think the most passionate thing for me work is actually how you framed it. Is for me as a feminist work that comes from thinking about women, other women, and the social context that we live in, and Laura Mulvey's essay, and that whole development is, to me, is why I want to make movies. Other than the fact that I love movies and I love cinema, but this is really at the core for me. At the key is it's almost like an activist position, which is why I don't really want to make scripts that aren't activist. Do you know?
Like,
so
when you position yourself in an industry, you don't even need to put it on the narrative, but when you position yourself in, like my scripts have this kind of character, this kind of aesthetics, and how I want to address those aesthetics, it's already an activism at some, not direct, but it is.
So I guess my problem in meetings has been that in order to fit in, I feel like I have to hide who I am. And that's been difficult because I feel like I don't feel like I can talk about feminism in meetings anymore. Like that's not a good thing to talk about. And I also don't feel like I want to talk about my style being unique, because you don't really want to talk about your uniqueness, actually, because you want to find common ground with other films that are being made and are making money. So when I feel silenced, that I can't actually talk about what I do and who I am, it doesn't go well in meetings. If I actually talk about who I am and what I'm doing, it makes you think, okay, so I have to conform. I don't really know how to conform, because I'm trying to tell the best stories that I can in the best way that I can. Like, I'm not trying to be weird. I'm not trying to be different. I'm just trying to do something that comes from inside. So I just hope there's more, that some film company can come along that actually really wants to make feminist pictures, you know, and then I think I'd have a good chance.
I might be optimistic, but I hope that it's not, I think it's not a one person movement, and there are many women film directors, film producers who are trying similar engagements to make feminist films happen and earn money and exist.
There are, and I know some of them, and they're struggling as much as I am. And some of them are much more experienced than I have, and have made are quite famous and have made a lot of movies, and they're struggling too. They're really struggling to find the money and the support. So it's not, so the Me Too movement didn't really reach Hollywood the way that we think it did, you know. And I know there are female producers out there that want to make feminist movies, but it's not just up to them. It's up to the distributors and the financiers. There's a whole team of people that have to approve, and usually, like, the majority of them are going to be men, and they're usually going to have other projects that are, even if they like it, they're usually going to have other projects that are higher priority on their list. Do you know what I mean? So it's difficult.
It is. Carla, you would like to ask a question?
Yes, I can't control myself really, but it was great to hear both of you, and Anna particularly, because you brought so many points and so many questions that we have been thinking here in Brazil, and also specifically on this showcase. So thank you very much for the both of you for this debate here today. But I would like to make one last question, perhaps, which relates directly to this event, which intends to investigate how this image of the witch has been inscribed and built and dealt with throughout cinema history, and not only in mainstream or fiction or US films, but in different approaches and countries and times. And one particular film we our screening, which is a very important and popular one, we programmed it in the same day as The Love Witch, so to watch it on sequence was very interesting, which is Bell, Book and Candle, made in the late 50s by Richard Quinn, starring
what is it called?
Bell, Book and Candle.
Oh, Bell, Book and Candle.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I love. Oh, yeah, that's one of my favorite.
Yeah,
movies.
it stars Kim Novak as this great vamp and femme fatale. And so I would like to ask you if this film, or in particular, but other films have entered The Love Witch as perhaps references or influences or homage or criticisms. Anyway, this kind of this imaginary of the witch in image and in film in particular, how did it inform your creation, being both as inspirations, but also as a need to bring it as a criticism? I mean,
so I Married a Witch with Veronica Lake. It was the TV show Bewitched was based on that. And Season of the Witch, early movie by George Romero. It's a feminist witch, very good movie.
We're screening Season of the Witch in the showcase as well.
I can't hear you now, but you can hear me. So, and then there was something called La Strega and Amore, an Italian film, which was really great. Can you hear me? La Strega in Amore. That was great. And that was about it. And Hollywood picture, Leave Her to Heaven, was like a Technicolor noir. It was very inspirational. Jean Tierney loves too much. She becomes evil because she loves too much. She kills her father by loving him too much, and she almost kills her husband by loving him. She's kind of a witch. And the Danish film Gertrude, directed by Carl Dreyer, is about a woman, and none of the men in her life can really love her. She has all these suitors and a husband, and they don't have the spiritual maturity to love her. They can't. They want to, but they can't. They're too absorbed in themselves and their manly, their business, their ego, and everything. And that was inspirational. So,
okay, thank you very much for your answer and for all the talk and all the answers and all the discussion today about The Love Witch and about film and everything. We don't really know if you're listening to me right now because we have internet issues, but I don't know if Analu wants to say something in order to finish.
I just want to say thank you very much. This is a very stimulating conversation, and I've really enjoyed it. And it's always wonderful for me and inspiring to talk to women who care about these things. It makes me want to keep going, keep fighting, and keep making more movies.
Please continue. Thank you so much for this lovely conversation. Your inspiration for us. And thank you so much, Carla, for bringing this conversation and bringing this showcase, which is very important and fantastic.
Thank you both.
Thank you very much. Okay. So
thank you, Anna. Thank you, Analu, and thank you everyone who's watching us right now. Thank you. Goodbye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.